Hi, I'm Anita Craig, the founder of Flow and the Master Leader Program. And today, in conversation, joining me is Dr. Eric Albertini. And Eric, you've got a PhD, an interesting one, your PhD around spirituality and the workplace and business. Tell us more about that.
That's correct, Anita. Yeah. So the PhD was looking at leadership development, in particular, developing leaders for the future world of work. But I took a perspective about integrating spirituality or the manifestations of a well-developed spiritual dimension into developing leaders for the future world of work.
And how does that relate to our current conditions today in this COVID and post-COVID world that we are now moving into?
In today's world, Anita, if I look at even pre-COVID, even before COVID, I want to go out on a limb a little bit and say that the traditional leadership development programs may not have worked as well as it was intended. And something was missing. In fact, some of the research out there suggested that the missing ingredient to the traditional leadership development program was not enough emphasis on the self, on going into the self at a deeper level and developing the foundational aspect of a leader, meaning the self. And I think the time is right now more than ever before. If anything, COVID has forced leaders to rethink what leadership is, how they lead, and more importantly, what they need to lead in this COVID era and post-COVID. And a lot of the qualities, the competencies, if we want to call them that these leaders will need going forward, come from deep within. So that's how I would link it to the COVID, post-COVID, where we are at the moment. The world is in a leadership crisis, as I think everybody knows.
Tell us in your experience of how's this development, which is quite transformational, that we are aspiring to and aiming at, in your view? What is required on this journey?
The deep transformation that's required is not an event. It's not you go on a course. It's lifelong. It's continuous learning. It's intentional learning. So individuals need to understand that, if one needs to develop one's ability to be curious, okay, you can go and do a 2-day module course, whatever you want to call it, on curiosity, but then one has to practice. One has to embed the tools, the techniques, the practices into one's life, and one needs to commit and intentionally continue to learn how to become a curious leader and how to develop your curiosity.
What do you think are some of the top learnings that people need to equip themselves with moving forwards, to be able to have these socially responsible organizations, business as a force for good, things that are really practical and grounded in the reality that we are living and working and navigating at this time?
Some of the things leaders of the future will need to be, and I stress it's more the being rather than the knowing and the doing. Again, a lot of leadership development will give you the knowing, the knowledge, they'll give you some of the skills, but not enough on how to be. And some of the things that leaders will need to be is curious. It's about suspending judgment and being open and curious. In the future, the ability to tolerate ambiguity is going to be absolutely critical. So the leader of the future has to calm people down, but also then must be comfortable in not knowing and be okay with not knowing. They need to deal with paradox, the ability to think both and not, as we have typically been trained to do, find a position and think either or, but rather both and is critical.
Yeah. What is the sense of personal mastery, and again, why is it important?
Yeah. Absolutely, Anita. So if one looks at personal mastery, there are quite a few different models of personal mastery. I think, and they're all good. certainly what we would focus on the program would start with understanding one's self from areas of avoidance and a behavioral preferences perspective. So who am I and why am I as I am? I need to understand what my triggers are. I need to understand what I default to and how I behave, and what behaviors I prefer and what behaviors I avoid. From that, there's also a dimension to personal mastery that says, so who am I at core? What are my values? What matters most? What will, for me, Eric, be the legacy I want to leave? What are the values that Eric lives by? Personal mastery is about action. There's an action mastery to personal mastery. It's getting things done.
I love that when you say, how does it translate?
Absolutely.
You tangible
and doable, correct.
Yes.
So personal mastery is about action mastery. There's a component to personal mastery about building quality relationships. What is a quality relationship? We can't lead without others. We only lead with and through others. So how do I build quality relationships to empower, enable, and engage followers?
Wonderful, thank you. So Eric, a big question for most people. What is the legacy that you are personally, your signature, Eric, wanting to leave on this world?
Yeah. Anita, I think I want to leave a legacy where I've helped transform people. I've given people the tools and techniques and helped shift people from one way of being to a better, more fulfilling way of being.
Any last parting message to participants out there?
Look, for anybody embarking on a journey like this, go in open-minded. Be prepared to be vulnerable. Go and be curious about yourself and trust in the process that we're going to take you through. Anita, that would be, but go in with without any preconceived biases, that you may have. Just go in and be curious, open-minded, and be prepared to be courageous and vulnerable.
In other words, a cup open, empty, and allowing the vessel to be refilled.
Quite right.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric, again.
Thank you, Anita. Pleasure. Lovely to be here.